Hello everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of MacroWaves, the podcast from BNP Paribas Economic Research Department. Today we are going to look at the role of artificial intelligence in the economic development of emerging countries. Which emerging economies are best positioned within supply chains to capitalize on the rise of AI? What challenges will they face in rolling out AI on a large scale in the medium term? And what productivity gains can be expected? My name is Luc Appelé, and I am the economist specializing in sub-Saharan Africa. To answer these questions today, I am joined by Christine Peltier, head of the Emerging Economies team, and Hélène Drouot, our Latin America economist. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Luca.
Let's start with an overview. In 2025, economic growth in emerging economies is estimated at 4.3%. This figure is partly due to strong export performance, driven by global demand for electronic products and AI-related goods. Christine, can you tell us which countries are benefiting most from the surge in demand for AI-related goods?
According to the World Trade Organization's classification, exports of AI-related goods reached 12% of total merchandise exports in 2025, amounting to $3.3 trillion. Of this total, 65% is exported by industrialized Asian countries. The region therefore holds a dominant position in this sector, especially in the semiconductor sector, as the Asian regions account for 85% of global exports. The short-term outlook for these countries is very good. The semiconductor market is expected to grow by a further 26% in 2026, following an already exceptional year in 2025.
So emerging Asia is in a kind of a pole position to capitalize on the rise of AI, but are all countries within the region equally prepared?
Well, no, not exactly. Taiwan stands out clearly as it boasts the highest specialization rate in the world. 61% of its exports are AI-related goods. The country's strategic position is significant because it manufactures almost all of the most advanced chips used by AI. Taiwan therefore holds a strategic advantage in its negotiations with trading partners, and especially with the US.
You're suggesting that Taiwan holds a kind of monopoly on the production of the most sophisticated chips. Does that mean that other countries are positioning themselves in other segments of the production chain?
That's right. We see specialization across the various stages of production. Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan have specialized in the manufacture of silicon wafers onto which integrated circuits are etched. Together with China, these four countries accounted for 80% of wafer production capacity in 2025. Further along the supply chain, we find Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, which have specialized in the assembly, testing, and packaging of chips. For these countries, although the contribution to GDP is more modest compared to advanced etching, the rise of AI also served as a catalyst for economic growth in 2025. By specializing in the manufacture of microchips, emerging Asia has successfully captured a large share of the global market of AI-related exports. But the manufacture of chips and semiconductors relies heavily on metals and minerals. Can emerging countries that produce commodities also thrive on the expansion of AI?
Yes, Christine. Several emerging countries have a strategic advantage thanks to their natural resources. We might be tempted to overlook this as raw materials account for only 2% of the total export value of AI-related goods, according to WTO classification. However, while AI uses relatively few metals and minerals in proportion to the added value of finished products, these raw materials are essential and, above all, difficult to substitute. This gives producers of critical metals a strong strategic advantage. This is exemplified by China, which controls a significant portion of the global supply of rare earths and refined minerals. China also imposes export restrictions, which it uses as a tool for exerting diplomatic pressure.
Global demand for commodities essential to AI is set to increase sharply in the coming years, especially for copper, where demand is expected to surge due to the expansion of data centers. How can emerging economies make the most of this?
Exporters of critical metals and minerals, such as Latin American countries and Indonesia, will need to attract foreign investment and forge new trade partnerships. This appeal is primarily achieved through a favorable business environment and a stable and strong institutions. However, in the long run, the challenge for them will be to avoid remaining mere exporters of raw materials. They will need to move further up the value chains by transforming their raw inputs into intermediate products. This will, however, involve tackling significant environmental issues, particularly in Brazil, Chile, and Argentina. The rise of AI is expected to drive up demand for raw materials, as well as for electricity. What is the current status of AI-related electricity consumption in emerging countries?
Well, at present, excluding China, it's still marginal. The AI sector accounts for less than 0.5% of total electricity demand. For emerging economies, the focus continues to be on industrial development and air conditioning, which will be the two primary factors driving the increase in electricity demand in the coming years.
So, China is a special case?
Yeah, absolutely. China holds a dominant position in AI. Its electricity consumption by its data centers has risen by an average of 15% per year over the last decade, and it now matches the consumption of its entire fleet of electric vehicles. To meet the growing demand for electricity, China has a clear strategy, which involves increasing electricity generation by 4% per year between now and 2030. And it is not the only emerging country banking on the potential of AI. The Gulf states are also planning a massive rollout of AI by 2030, and they are relying on their abundant oil wealth to build and power data centers at an unbeatable cost.
In this race to adopt AI, will there be any losers?
Well, yes, unfortunately, we can expect some losers in this race. The risk is mainly in sub-Saharan Africa. Due to its low electrification rate, it risks being sidelined, and its share of total global foreign investment flows is likely to fall, while it's already extremely low. And this situation could even lead to challenges in securing external financing in both the short and medium term.
Now that we're on the subject of AI adoption, let's look at the productivity gains it could bring. Christine, do you think AI will transform the economies of emerging countries in the short term?
We need to be cautious. For the time being, massive investment by the US Big Four is driving up demand for tech products, and this is directly fostering growth in several emerging economies. However, for AI to boost local productivity and increase growth potential in the medium term, it will take a long time for AI-related skills to become widespread. It's not enough just to buy chips. You need to train people, reorganize production processes, and invest heavily in human capital. This is a key challenge for Central Europe. Countries like Poland and Hungary may lack critical metals, yet they are banking on a skilled workforce and ambitious government plans to integrate AI into their industry and reap the benefits.
So conversely, does AI pose economic risks?
There is a high risk of dependence on a limited number of countries. At present, 82% of global AI development capacity is concentrated in the US, the European Union, and China. China's presence across almost the entire AI value chain could increase global trade dependence on China in the short term. Furthermore, the rivalry between China and the United States poses a significant geopolitical risk that could lead to supply chain disruption. Finally, and quite simply, economies are exposed to a potential correction in the technology boom, in other words, to the bursting of the AI bubble.
Thank you very much for your insights, Christine and Hélène. So in summary, we see that emerging economies have various strategic resources that they can leverage due to the rise of artificial intelligence. We have countries that are strategically positioned within AI supply chains, particularly in Asia, that gain both a growth driver and a geopolitical advantage. And similarly, we have commodity exporting countries, which hold strategic importance as well. However, these countries, they need to move up the value chains to make the most of AI's development. So the outlook is therefore favorable for most emerging countries. However, we must remain vigilant regarding the economic and geopolitical risks, as well as the challenges that the adoption of AI entails. Thank you very much to our listeners. We invite you to explore these topics in detail by consulting our latest issue of Eco Perspectives, which focuses on emerging economies and is available on the BNP Paribas Economic Research website. The links can be found in the description, and we'll be back shortly with the next issue of MacroWaves soon.